Alright, welcome along to Here's Rodder's Reviews, and we're getting into Star Wars The Force Awakens in this one. Now, I've been putting off the sequel trilogy for quite a while on the channel because it's just a battleground these days between the people that love it and hate it. You're either in one group or the other when it comes to these three movies. And in all fairness, I have to say off the bat here, before we even get into the first one here, I'm not a fan of the sequel trilogy, but having said that, there is elements from the movies that jumped out at me and I did enjoy aspects of it, and not the most popular aspects, but we will get to that as we go through them. But again, these three movies, I feel like I'm going to go through them here for you, but the thing for me that brought them down in my estimation is something that quite a few of the movies that were based on big franchises failed, was they didn't respect what came before them, quite like Ghostbusters, the reboot, the female-led Ghostbusters. Now, I've said it before about that movie. Now, a lot of people's going to probably, like anybody who's watching this here now, and I've referenced that movie in particular, are going to jump in there. Oh, you're a woman hater. No, nothing to do with that there. The fact that I didn't like that movie, and I'm not a fan of the sequel trilogy of the Star Wars movies, that it just, neither one of them respected what came before them, and I feel that they had done that, they would have had a better reception. Now, a lot of people like these movies, I know that. If they're your first introduction to Star Wars, my hand and heart, I love you. If you're a new Star Wars fan and The Force Awakens, any of the sequel trilogy brought you in, love it. Absolutely love it. They've got a place in your heart. They just don't really have it in mine. Now, this first one, for me, was a safety play. It really did feel like a safety play. Now, how the movie looks and plays out, it's a great popcorn movie. Fantastic visuals. The acting is pretty damn good, but there's a few things in there where, when it happens, you're just thinking to yourself, why would you greenlight this? Most notably for me, and I know I'm jumping ahead of what's happening in the movie here, was the fact that Kylo Ren, which for me isn't a scary villain. Now, it may be for new people and kids watching it, but for me watching it now, it just didn't strike that element of fear into you that Darth Vader did back in the day. And I've shared this story before on other reviews of Star Wars. I can remember I wasn't that old when the Return of the Jedi came out, and when it did come out, there was a huge toy store just a few miles from where I live at. I remember my mother taking me in there one day, and the bottom floor of the shop was like groceries and all that sort of stuff. Then the second floor of the shop had the toy section in it. So that was one of the best toy sections I've ever been in my life, and you always looked forward whenever your parents went for the weekly shop. You get up to that top floor to check out the new toys and see what new Transformers and whatnot right back in the day. But yes, to go up onto that second floor, there's a flight of stairs went up, and then there's like a little I went up and it went round, and then it went up again to the second floor. Down this little level between the floors, there was a huge life-size cardboard cutout of Darth Vader up there, and I, as a child, was petrified of this thing. I didn't want to get near it. It was like the first time in history that I didn't go to the top floor of that shop to check out the toys as a child, because Darth Vader was just that sort of a villain in the series that freaked you out back in the day. And now, and having said that, we all know that Darth Vader was actually the hero of the trilogy by the end of that movie. But again, He had that fear factor that for me Kylo Ren didn't have, and the fact that there's a part in the movie where he has the burned out mask of Vader there, and like, I'm gonna finish what you started. For me, watching that there, I was just kind of like, alright, what the hell's going on here? Because, you know, obviously he should know what the crack is. That's a very Northern Ireland saying, what the crack is. He should know what the story is behind Darth Vader, who he ended up being revealed as, especially as we find out that he's the son of Han and Leia, and of course, you know, he was sort of trained by Luke Skywalker, so he should have known that Darth Vader was not this big villain he wants to play up to. So I'm thinking to myself, as soon as that section in this movie happened alone, I'm just like, alright, why did Anakin Skywalker just not turn up as a Force ghost and be like, son, you settle your head, wise up. Just little elements I got there just sort of ruined it for me. But having said all that there, Disney does own Star Wars now, and they do have the right to do whatever the hell they want with it. But you know what, it's the same for any movie. It'll either land for you or it won't land for you. But the movie itself, for me, was a big safety play, and its layout, it's very, very similar, and all the plot points that it hits to Star Wars: A New Hope. At the very beginning, for example, Poe Dameron, he receives a map to Luke's location, and yes, there's an attack by Kylo Ren and the stormtroopers of the what do you call them, the First Order in this movie. They turn up, attack, and he, in the last ditch effort to save the map to Luke Skywalker, he puts the map into a droid DB8 and sends him off. So exactly the same as the opening to A New Hope, essentially. So yes, an interesting element in this movie was Finn in the movie, Stormtrooper FN 2187, who turns against the First Order. He's not into it. He wants to escape, get away from it, and he actually helps Poe escape from the Star Destroyer on the TIE Fighter. That whole sequence looks fantastic. They do get shot down back onto the planet Jakku, which is Tatooine with a different name. While all that's happening, we're getting introduced to the hero of the story, Rey, who's a scavenger, and she's picking up parts from old Star Destroyers that were from the last war. So one of the big things that I did enjoy in this movie when I first watched it was seeing all the old style ships and things that we're used to from the original trilogy. So you've got Star Destroyers wrecked and landed on the planet. Excuse me. She's actually set up camp inside a wrecked AT-AT, and yeah, just seeing some of the older elements from the originals was nice to see. So just a matter of time before you get the Millennium Falcon in this, and that turns up when the First Order eventually comes after Poe and Finn. She gets caught up in the middle of it, and her and Finn are forced to escape on this ship that they're trying to get to, but it gets blown out of the water. And Finn points to another ship, what about this one? And she's like, no, that's a piece of junk. And you know, as the other ship explodes, she's like, you know, the junk will do. And we pan across, and there's the Millennium Falcon sitting there. So it was nice to see the Millennium Falcon back, but again, it was one of those elements in the movie that, as a fan growing up with it, there's quite a few things in these three movies that you don't want to see. And one of them was what they did with the legacy characters of Han Solo in particular in this movie. You see where it's going at a certain point in this movie. Han Solo was in this along with Chewie. It's nice to see the two of them back together again. And when Rey and Finn escape the Millennium Falcon, they're captured in a tractor beam by another ship. They think it's the First Order coming to to get them, but it turns out it's Han and Chewie, and they get them the name Falcon, and they explain that the Falcon was stolen by somebody and it was sold to another guy. It went through a few different hands, have been hunting this thing down for a long time. We discover throughout the movie that things have gone south between Han and Leia, and they're split up essentially at this point in time. You know, for me, the original trilogy, Han Solo for me was probably the big hero on it. Like, everybody talks about Luke Skywalker being the big hero of it, but Han turns up in those 3 movies and he does things, his character development, where he starts off at the smuggler. I couldn't get the right name there, I was going to say scavenger. The smuggler that ends up in the hero by the end of the trilogy, the Death Star run. He turns up at the end of it and distracts Vader long enough for that kill shot in the Death Star. So if he wasn't there, Luke probably would have got blown out of the sky. Of course, he makes the big sacrifice and the Empire Strikes Back. And the third one, he takes out the shield generator for Death Star 2. So the main hero, and you get that happy ending between him and Leia at the end of the movie, and it's, you know, happily ever after for the legacy characters. But then as we get into this new movie, we discover that things have gone south, they've broken up, he's back as a smuggler again. They just reset the character. I didn't like that at all. But yes, Han figures out that the map is incomplete that DB8 has, and he explains that Luke attempted to rebuild the Jedi Order but exiled himself when an apprentice turned to the dark side. Didn't say who he was at this point, who this apprentice was, but this guy turns to the dark side, destroys Luke's temple and slaughtered all the other apprentices. So Luke goes into hiding the way Yoda did, the way Obi-Wan did. And people, when we get to the, like, I'm skipping badly ahead here and I really shouldn't, but people, when the Last Jedi came out, everybody went after Rian Johnson for what he did to the character of Luke Skywalker, and he took the brunt of the fan backlash for, this isn't Luke Skywalker, he would never do something like this here. But you know, you need to keep in mind that this movie here was, like, J.J. Abrams come out of this smelling the roses after the first 2 movies, and yes, not so much after the third movie, but he seemed to get off scot-free for what happened with the character of Luke Skywalker. But in my mind, this movie sets it up. The Luke is cleared off, he's went into hiding, and he's already there. He's completely out of the picture in this movie until the final moments of it. And yes, I was down to J.J. Abrams, Lawrence Kasdan, and Michael Ardent. I've probably butchered his second name. And good old Kathleen Kennedy put Luke Skywalker into exile on that island. So I kind of feel it was a bit, you know, out of order that your man took so much flack for it. But yes, and again we have Starkiller Base in this movie, which is essentially a new Death Star. And another thing that kind of felt out of place for me, for it does have a lot of destructive power, more than the Death Star's ever had. But the big flaw that this one has is eventually it's just going to run out of power, because they set it up as it uses the power of a sun. You know, it sucks the sun in, transfers its energy, and uses that as a destructive energy or destructive power. So it's built into a planet. So in my mind, okay, what's going to happen when it runs out of a sun's in its vicinity to use its power? And when it does take out those suns, obviously, because the sun's not there, it's going to kill the planet that Death Star, that the Starkiller Base is built into. But that's maybe thinking a little bit too much into it. But again, it is what it is. So yes, we do find ourselves in a situation where the Rebel Alliance that has been run by Leia in this movie have to fight against another Death Star, and the idea is to get there, take it out. So you get a Death Star end to this movie as well, just like the first one. And where we had Obi-Wan sacrificing himself in episode 4, and this one, it's poor old Han Solo that has to do it. And we've discovered that Kylo Ren is the son of Han and Leia. They have a moment where Han tries to talk him back to the good side of the Force, and take off that mask, you don't need it, sort of thing. Another thing that I didn't like about Kylo Ren is the whole get up of wearing the mask, and he just wants to be a retread of Darth Vader, so he's wearing this mask trying to be Darth Vader essentially. So there's a nice moment there with Han Solo, even though he dies in this movie, and you don't want to see him die. The moment Kylo Ren takes him out and Han reaches up and rubs his cheek was a nice little moment. Top of the acting honours in this movie for me was Chewbacca's reaction to Han Solo getting a lightsaber through the chest. Fantastic. I'm just like, yes, Chewie, get him. But of course, he's the new big bad, can't be taken out too early. So, I see what they were trying to do with this movie. Like, I'm really jumping over it here. I'm not hitting many of the big plot points of it, but the resistance fighters attack. There's this machine that kind of regulates the power of Star Killer Base. A nice little callback, actually, just never say Star Killer. That was originally the original scripts to Star Wars way back in the 70s. Luke Skywalker's original name was going to be Luke Starkiller, so bringing back the Starkiller name for this base was a nice little callback, so I'll give that to them. But before that Kylo Ren and Han moment, they're in this place putting explosives in there, which harkens back to Return of the Jedi when they're trying to take out the shield generator. Similar to that, they're trying to take out this regulator, and once they take that out, the Starkiller base should just have a complete backfire, and the power that it's taken from the sun will take out the base itself. As far as Rey goes in this movie, I see what they were trying to do with her. It's in the title, The Force Awakens. Like, she's obviously a new Anakin Skywalker. They're thinking of trying to make her. People are like, that's weird that she can just become Force sensitive and then just be able to do things straight away, which is a fair point. But at the same time, if The Force Awakens and she's one the Force is awakening, and it's almost as if they had 3 movies, but they were trying to put too much into the one movie. If they'd maybe took a little bit more time to expand her, the way they did with Luke between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, yes, perhaps. But yeah, no Jedi influence whatsoever, and she's able to do this, that, the other. She does the Jedi mind trick on a stormtrooper to escape from being trapped in this cell, which is a nice callback to The Empire Strikes Back. It's the same sort of torture chair that Han Solo was in that. But she's fit to do all these tricks. The Jedi mind trick. She uses the Force to grab the lightsaber at the end of it. They get Luke's lightsaber that he had in A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back, which was the same lightsaber that Anakin Skywalker had in the original trilogy, which disappeared at the fight in Cloud City between Vader and Luke when Luke got his hand chopped off. So this lightsaber turns up. No explanation of how this character got it. What's her name? I can't even look for it. Maz Kanata has this lightsaber hidden in a little box. Rey finds it. She has this vision of things that have happened in the past. You see Cloud City again, and when she's questioning how she got hold of this lightsaber, she's just like, that is another story for another time. So a lot of things that happen in this movie don't get an explanation, and that was that didn't improve as we went forward. But yeah, she's just able to do everything. Up at the end of the movie, Kylo Ren and Rey end up facing off in the woods, and Kylo incapacitates Rey, and Finn uses the lightsaber to fight Kylo, but he's quickly defeated. He's taken out, and yes, he's pretty much in a coma by the end of this movie after the fight. But she's able to fight Kylo using the Force and whatnot, and he's starting to go into that dark side thing where you need someone to train you and whatnot, and blah blah blah. And he's trying to turn her to the dark side already, while the planet is starting to destroy itself around them, because they've taken out the regulator. Now everything's starting to, Star Trek free territory, where Genesis was exploding around Captain Kirk as he was having his final fight with the Klingon. Similar ending to this movie. So, it's one of those things where at this point in time, all the good ideas have seemed to be used up, and there's a lot of stuff popping up in these movies that you've just seen before. Chewbacca manages to save Rey, and Finn, the Millennium Falcon, pops up. They get onto it after she strikes Kylo Ren down, leaving a gash in his face, and she takes out his leg. She doesn't cut his leg off, but that's another thing about the new Star Wars. It seems that the lightsabers don't do the same damage that they used to do back in the day, but people are surviving stabs by lightsabers now in the new Star Wars universe. But it is what it is. Again, in my mind, the film either get you or it won't get you. It's the same with any movie. You're either going to love the sequel trilogy or hate it. I don't think there's much middle ground there. I'm not a fan of it, but there's a few elements in it that spoke to me because of personal experiences in my real life, and we'll get into that in the next episode. But Kylo Ren escapes, Rey escapes, Millennium Falcon, off they go. At the end of the movie, they travel back to the rebel base, and there's a moment between Leia and Rey whenever she feels that Han's gone, and they've got a moment where they hug each other. Chewbacca just walks past Leia at this point, which I didn't feel was good. I think Han been taken out, there should have been more there between Leia and Chewbacca at the end of the movie. He should have been the one to at least give her a hug, or one of those one arm around the shoulder sort of thing, but he just walks off. The other thing, and if memory serves, it was changed after the initial release of the movie. Blatantly, Disney just wanted to sell a whole bunch of new toys and stuff for this franchise. Of course, fair play to them, merchandising was always a big part of Star Wars, but you have C-3PO turning up whenever Leia and Han have the moment where they're reconnected with each other. C-3PO turns up and he's like, "Oh, Han Solo, perhaps you didn't recognise me because of my red arm." And I'm just like, oh man, they've painted one of his arms red just so they can sell a new toy of him. And there was a bit of a backlash from that. I could be wrong here. I did watch this movie in the cinema whenever it first came out. At the end of the film, and the Millennium Falcon is taken off, Rey and Chewbacca and R2-D2, they're heading off. They finally got the full map to find Luke. They're heading off to get him. And as the Millennium Falcon's leaving, you can see people waving them off. And of course, C-3PO's there and he's waving and he's got his gold arm back. But I think when I watched it the first time in the cinema, I think the arm was still red at the end of the movie. I could be wrong there. If you know for sure, let me know in the comments. But yeah, R2-D2 was another thing in this movie. He just shuts himself down after Luke leaves. He only restarts at the end of the movie whenever they're putting the map back together. And yeah, it's just a lot of weird elements in this movie that didn't really work for me. But they managed to find Luke on an island, on a planet. And he's, at the end of the film, Rey finds him on top of this cliff on this island. And she pulls out the lightsaber to hand it to him. And, he turns around in his Jedi gear and brings the hood down, and we just cut to the credits. So, again, it's one of these things. The movie looks fantastic. Don't get me wrong. The film, as a popcorn movie, looks fantastic. The first sequence with the Millennium Falcon escaping Jakku was fantastic. Looked amazing. Again, seeing that ship after so many years was great. But yeah, for me and a lot of the older fans, I feel that if they had have just respected what came before a little bit more. Like, the last thing you want as a fan growing up with these movies, like as I said at the beginning, whenever Return of the Jedi came out, I was a child. I'm not even going to estimate what age I was at this point. I couldn't have been any more than maybe 6 or 7 years old when Return of the Jedi came out. Something like that. I was just a small child. The heroes these days, it seems to be, you're just slowly taking them out one by one. And it's not just Star Wars. Like, I could say the same about Indiana Jones, but at some point we'll get into his movies on the show as well. But having said all that there, Disney, when Disney do something right with Star Wars, they do it in style. Like, some of the shows that are coming out now are fantastic. I haven't gotten into Ahsoka as yet. I want to go back and do the Clone Wars before I get into it. The one thing that I did realise when I started Ahsoka was there's just too many holes in the story there for me. You need to know some of the backstory to Ahsoka, especially the big villain at the end of that series, I think was from Star Wars Rebels. So I want to go back and do everything as far as Ahsoka's concerned. So we'll probably about it. Once we get these movies out of the road, we're going to start reviewing all the episodes of Clone Wars, Star Wars Rebels, all that sort of stuff. So we're going to be down the rabbit hole of Star Wars for quite a while on the channel here. But yeah, when they do it right, they do it in style. But for me and a lot of other people, as far as the fan base goes, the sequel trilogy was a misstep. I think that's for me. Like, as I say, there's some elements of it that I enjoyed, and not to the popular opinion enjoyed, but we will get there in the next review in the series of movies here. But the movie, it had a budget of $470 million, and at the box office it made $2.071 billion. So, as far as the numbers goes, it was a success. But where it is now, after this sequel trilogy, is anybody's guess. But I do want to go on record now as saying that I think Rian Johnson, what he did with the character as far as what happened to him after he was exiled, wasn't the best decision. I'll agree with people there. But it was J.J. Abrams that put him onto that island in exile in the first place. So, the fault sits with him as well. But the comeuppance came to him with the rise of Skywalker, jumping ahead again, sorry to say. But I did have that feeling when he wasn't originally supposed to direct the rise of Skywalker. There was somebody else on there at the very beginning, and it was changed back to Abrams. And as soon as that happened, I lost faith that that movie was going to be any good, because J.J. Abrams, I like his style and a lot of stuff that he does. He did the reboot to Star Trek back in 2007, I want to say, which was fairly good. It was one of these continuator like reboots that was like a new universe sort of thing, but it did respect what came before it, so it worked well. But he came back for the sequel, Star Trek Into Darkness, which for me was a big misstep in Star Trek. That's another good popcorn movie, but for me, that cemented it in my mind that J.J. Abrams is good at starting something, but he's not good at continuing something. So whenever he was brought in as the director for The Rise of Skywalker, I knew we were going to have a misstep with that. And just to jump ahead to that movie, that was the biggest budget, childish hissy fit. A big budget childish hissy fit was what that movie was. It was just somebody that threw their toys out of the pram, wasn't happy with the film. It was before it, and spent most of the third film trying to correct everything that happened in the film prior to it. So a mess from beginning to end. There was no huge plan for the sequel trilogy. Now that's not just me talking, that's on record by a lot of people, even within Lucasfilm. Just they had an idea for something, but there was no overarching idea for the three movies, and that was very, very apparent by the time we got to the third one. But again, if you love this movie, God bless you, hand on heart, I'm going to back you up all the way. These are your movies. There's an introduction to every saga for everyone, every saga, every franchise for everyone. But for me, bit of a misstep. Anyway, that's going to do it. If you don't agree with me, that's fine. But it is what it is. I want to be as honest as I can on my reviews. So yeah, until the next episode, guys, stay safe, and I'll talk to you all then.